magical signal otherwise, but we'll just go ahead and start. So I understand that we have about 80 minutes. My name is Christine Fair. I want to thank again Dr. Darvood Muradian for the privilege of being here once again in Herat. So the panel is an interesting panel. I'm an American, if you can't tell from my voice. Probably 2 years ago, I may have had a different view on the nation state, but after November 2016, I think many Americans are having a rethink about what it means to be an American and what it means to live in a nation state. Certainly for the first time in my life as an American, we have a minority of Americans that have elected a populist vulgarian who has been mobilized and indeed elected because of, not in spite of, the fact that he has helped to normalize rapacious misogyny, racism, explicit racism of a kind that I have never seen in my lifetime as an American. Hatred that is explicitly by fears of Muslims, fears of Jews. My grandfather fought wars against these kinds of beliefs and mentality. Yet, a year ago, my citizens, well, a minority of my citizens, elected a person who espouses these very values. He is homophobic. He espouses basically everything that most Americans of my generation did not think was even American. And every single day, I wake up and I see what kind of crazy things this man that some people call President of the United States has done. In short, the most powerful nation in the world is led by a mendacious lunatic hell-bent upon undoing many things that we have literally fought wars to accomplish. And yet it appears as if there are no constraints to his power. We have learned that these institutions that many Americans have told other countries about in great detail are so robust are in fact not robust. We are having to confront for the first time that this electoral system that our nation is built upon is in fact deeply problematic, although we go around the world telling other nations how to build electoral systems. We have rampant gerrymandering. We have a party that knows it can win by restricting the voting rights of minorities in the most explicit and rapist, yes, that too, and racist of terms. As our population continues to urbanize in a very short number of years, 80% of our population will have 20% of the Senate, and 20% of the population will have 80%. And that 20% is the least cosmopolitan. It is the most racist. It is the most misogynist. It is most likely to hearken back to some fiction of an America that only existed on really lousy television shows. And yet we wake up every day to see a president using words like rocket man, undoing previous commitments like our agreement with Iran, and hell-bent to create a war to hide the simple fact that he wasn't legitimately elected, but more likely was elected as a consequence of all of these illiberal electoral features of our system, but also in collusion with Russia. So today, I stand before you as a representative of a country that has very much lost its way. And it's not clear how we get our way back. It's not clear how we fix the things that have been so quickly broken within a year. But I'm fortunate in that Americans are not the only ones in this battle, right? Countries all over the world, whether we're looking at India, France, Germany, we are all under the same pressures of these populist regimes that want to romanticize a world that probably never existed, and when it did exist, it would probably have been pretty lousy, because at least half of us would not have been empowered. So we have a very distinguished panel today to discuss what I think is a topic that is incredibly important, for which there's no immediate or evident answers. So you can, I don't have their extensive biographies before me, but we're going to go in the order in which they're listed. We're going to begin with Dr. Anwar Haq Ahadi. He is a scholar and the former Minister of Finance from Afghanistan. We have Professor Paolo Rufino. He's the Secretary General of Pugwash on Science and World Affairs based in Italy and the United States. We have Professor Magnus Marsden. He's the Director of Sussex Asia Center at the University of Sussex in the United Kingdom. And we have Professor Abdul Salam Mohammad Nazarov from Tajikistan National University. So we'll begin with Dr. Ahadi. And you'll have 12 minutes. I'm going to be pretty sucked about harassing you if you go over that limit.
د افغانستان ډیرو معززو مشرانو محترمو میلمنو خویندو ورونو السلام علیکم ورحمت الله وبرکاتو. زه هم په خپل وار غواړم چې د کنفرانس بهرني او افغان میلمنو ته ښه راغلاست ووایم. همدارنګه غواړم چې په عمومي ډول د افغانستان د ستراتیژیکو مطالعاتو له مؤسسې او په خاص ډول د ډاکټر صاحب داود مرادیان څخه مننه وکړم چې دا کنفرانس یې جوړ کړی او ماته یې د ګډون بلنه راکړې. هرات د تیموري تمدن مرکز و او مدنیت پیژندنه او مدنیت پالنه تر اوسه پورې د هرات په خلکو کې قوي دی. زما لپاره هرات ته راتګ هر وخت له خوښۍ څخه ډک دی او نن هم چې په هرات کې په دې کنفرانس کې ګډون کوم ډېر خوښ یم. له ما نه غوښتل سوي چې نن په نړیوالو چارو کې د ملي دولتونو په نقش خصوصا په بدلونو باندې وغږېږم. ما تصمیم ونیو چې نن بحث مې لږ څه تیوریکي او عمومي واوسیږي. په نړیوالو چارو کې د ملي دولتونو نقش یو ډېر مهم او ډېر مشکل بحث دی. دا بحث ځکه مهم دی چې نړیوالې چارې د ملي دولتونو په چوکاټ کې اجرا کیږي. همدا اوس ډېر مهمه نړیواله مؤسسه د ملګرو ملتونو مؤسسه چې 193 ملي دولتونه پکې غړیتوب لري. د نورو مهمو جهاني او منطقوي مؤسساتو لکه جهاني بانک، بین المللي وجهي صندوق، د آسیا لپاره انکشافي بانک، د امریکایي دولتونو سازمان، د افریقا د یووالي سازمان، نړیوال تجارت سازمان، د جنوبي آسیا د منطقوي همکاریو انجمن، د آسیا د جنوبي شرق ملتونو انجمن او د عربو ټولنه ټول ملي دولتونه نه جوړه سوي دي. همدارنګه حتی په ډېرو نړیوالو تعاملاتو کې لکه بین المللي سفرونه، بین المللي تجارت، بین المللي سرمایه گذاري او بین المللي مهاجرتونو کې د ملي دولتونو نقش په هر قدم کې لیدل کیږي. خو د ملي دولتونو له دې ښکاره نقش سره سره په تېرو څو لسیزو کې د نړیوالو چارو ځینې متفکرینو نظر ورکړی چې نړۍ د جهانیتوب یا ګلوبلایزیشن پخوا روانه ده او په دې نوې نړۍ کې د ملي دولتونو نقش په سرعت سره مخ په کمېدو دی. دوی په دې فکر دي چې ګلوبلایزیشن یوازې اقتصادي پدیده نه بلکې سیاسي او کلتوري پدیده هم ده او په نړیوالو چارو کې د ملي دولتونو د نقش بحث ځکه مشکل دی چې ډېر متفکرین دا تر اوسه د ملت او ملي دولت په معنا پوره توافق نه لري او د ارزښتونو له لحاظه ځینو متفکرینو لپاره ملي ګرایي او ملي دولتونه لوړ اخلاقي سیاسي مفاهیم دي خو ځینې نور ورته په بده سترګه ګوري. در بحث امروز میخواهیم مرور مختصری بر ظهور دولت‌های ملی و پالیسی‌های دولت‌های ملی، روند جهانی شدن و به نظر بعضها نزول دولت ملی، انکشاف چند سال اخیر در بعضی کشورهای غربی به نفع دولت‌های ملی، اقتصاد ملی و کلتور ملی و بالاخره دورنمای نقش دولت‌های ملی در امور جهانی داشته باشم. دلچسب است که با وجود اهمیت بسیار واضح دولت‌های ملی در امور جهانی، تاریخ نقش حاکم دولت‌های ملی در امور جهانی نسبتاً کوتاه است. در طول تاریخ دولت‌های امپراتوری و دودمانی و متکی بر فتوحات حاکم بودند. با وجود آن که بحث راجع به ملتگرایی قبل از انقلاب کبیر فرانسه وجود داشت، ولی دولت‌های ملی بیشتر بعد از انقلاب فرانسه و جنگ‌های ناپلیون در اروپا ظهور کردند. همچنان مبارزه برای دولت‌های ملی در امریکای لاتین نیز در قرن 19 آغاز و بالاخره منتج به تأسیس چندین دولت ملی شد. بعد از جنگ دوم جهانی موج نو کلان از تشکیل دولت‌های ملی در آسیا و آفریقا آغاز شد و موج آخر تشکیل دولت‌های ملی در آسیا بعد از سقوط اتحاد شوروی و در اروپا بعد از تجزیه یوگسلاویا آغاز شد. فعلا تقریبا همه دولت‌ها خود را دولت‌های ملی می‌خوانند و آن جمعیت از مردمی که خود را صاحب کلتور خاصی ملی می‌دانند مثل کردها و کاتالان‌ها برای تشکیل دولت ملی مستقل مبارزه می‌کنند. با وجود آن که بحث فلسفه ملیگرایی و اصول دولت‌های ملی بسیار پیچیده و شامل تناقضات و ابهامات است، اما به صورت عموم می‌توانیم بگوییم که وطن دوستی، دولت مبنی بر ملت، حکومت بر اساس رای مردم، استقلال سیاسی، مساوات قانونی شهروندان، تشویق معاملات اقتصادی در بین افراد ملت و تشویق وحدت کلتوری خصوصا زبان ملی از اصول مهم دولت‌های ملی هستند. با وجود آن که اکثریت این اصول حالا قبول شده معلوم می شود، 200 سال قبل زمانی که دولت‌های ملی پدیده نو بود این ارزش‌ها جبهه انقلابی داشتند. این اصول برای سالها پالیسی‌های دولت‌های ملی را راهنمایی می‌کرد. در اکثر دولت‌های ملی نوبنیاد سرحدات کشور با مجموع نفوس قومی که اساس دولت ملی را ساخته بود تطابق نداشت. حتی در کشورهایی که یک قوم کلان اساس دولت ملی را می ساخت، جمعیت‌های کلان آن ملت خارج از سرحدات کشور و در دولت‌های دیگری زندگی می‌کردند. برعکس جمعیت‌های دیگری از اقوام دیگر در داخل دولت نوبنیاد ملی زندگی می‌کردند. این حالت زمینه را برای بروز اختلافات و تصادمات بین دولت‌های ملی و در داخل دولت‌های ملی بین حکومت مرکزی و بعضی گروه‌های قومی مساعد می‌ساخت. چالش‌ها برای دولت‌های ملی این بودند چطور می‌توانند از مردمی که همه‌شان صاحب کلتوری واحد نبودند یک جمعیت سیاسی واحد یعنی ملت را بسازند که به کشور و دولت ملی وفادار باشند و چطور در صلح و امنیت با دولت‌های همجوار زندگی کرده می‌توانند. دولت‌های ملی در همه نقاط دنیا پالیسی وحدت کلتوری را تعقیب کردند و هدف داشتند که در نتیجه پالیسی آنها یک ملت واحد ظهور کند. آنچه وحدت ملی را بسیار کمک کرد پالیسی مساوات حقوقی شهروندان یا مبارزه بر ضد تبعیض مذهبی، نژادی و قومی بود. ازدیاد معاملات اقتصادی در بین مناطق مختلف کشور، اعمار زیربنای مواصلاتی، افتتاح مکاتب ابتدایی و ثانوی با نصابهای ملی، انکشاف بازارها به سطح ملی، ایجاد بوروکراسی دولتی و تهیه خدمات عمومی به همه مردم، محافظت از سرحدات و ایجاد سیستم پاسپورت و ویزا و میدیای ملی خصوصا رادیو و تلویزیون بعد از جنگ جهانی دوم در تقویه دولت‌های ملی و در ملت‌سازی بسیار مؤثر ثابت شدند. متاسفانه که دولت‌های ملی در کنترل کردن اختلافات با دول همجوار بسیار کامیاب نبودند. بر این منوال بعد از جنگ‌های ناپلیون در اوایل قرن 19 تا دهه 1950 دولت‌های ملی نه تنها اینکه بازیگران اساسی در صحنه بین‌المللی بودند بلکه عمده‌ترین محور زندگی شهروندان خود در امور اقتصادی، کلتوری و مهاجرت‌های داخلی بودند. خود 1980 په لسیزه کې اروپایان دې نتیجې ته ورسېدل چې د دوی ملي بازارونه نسبتاً واړه دي او موافقه یې وکړه چې د خپلو هیوادونو ترمنځ ګمرکي محصولات له منځه یوسي او غربي اروپا د تجارتي اموالو لپاره د یو واحد بازار په صفت پرانستل شوه. دغه حرکت په مجموعي ډول ټولو غړو هیوادونو ته ګټه ورسوله او د اقتصادي ودې اندازه یې په ټولو غړو هیوادونو کې لوړه چې دې حالت په 15 کلونو کې په اروپا کې د خلکو د ژوند سطحه ډیره جګه کړه. د اروپا د بازارونو د یووالي مثبتو نتایجو د نړۍ د نورو مناطقو هیوادونو هم وهڅول چې د ملي بازارونو په ځای منطقوي لوی بازارونه جوړ کړي او په خپلو کې هم د تجارت او سرمایه ګذاري په مخ ملي موانع لکه ګمرکي محصولات له منځه یوسي. البته د اروپا د ګډ بازار نه لوی تقلید په شمالي امریکا کې د امریکا، کاناډا او مکسیکو ترمنځ د شمالي امریکا آزاد تجارتي منطقه یا د نفتا ګډ بازار و چې د 1990 په لسیزه کې جوړ شو او د اروپا په شان په شمالي امریکا کې هم مثبت اقتصادي نتایج درلودل. آسیان د آسیا په جنوب شرق کې او سارک د آسیا په جنوب کې هم په همدې مقصد جوړ شول خو کامیابي د اروپا او شمالي امریکا ګډو بازارونو په مقایسه کمه وه. سربیره په منطقوي اقتصادي بلاکونو د نړیوال تجارت سازمان یا WTO هڅې چې د بینالمللي تجارت په مخ ګمرکي او اداري موانع ډېر کم کړي او د بحري ترانسپورت په بیه کې دغه کمښت له امله بینالمللي تجارت ډېر زیات شو چې دغو انکشافاتو په ملي اقتصاد کې د بینالمللي تجارت څخه هم نسبت پخوا ته ډېر لوړ کړ. که د 20مې پیړۍ تر نیمایي پورې اکثرا تولید د ملي بازارونو لپاره وو. تمویل د هیواد دننه اجرا کېده او مصرف هم د هیواد دننه وو. د شلمې پیړۍ په آخر کې تولید، تمویل او استهلاک تر ډېره حده بین المللي سو او په دې ډول د بین المللي بازارونو اهمیت نسبت پخوا ته کم او د بین المللي بازارونو اهمیت نسبت پخوا ته ډېر سو. د اروپایي اتحادیې د غړو هیوادونو په اقتصادي یووالي باندې اکتفا ونه کړه او په ښکاره یې ویل چې هدف یې د ملي دولتونو تضعیف او په ځای یې د ټولنې د ټولې اروپا لپاره سیاسي ادارې جوړول او د اروپا سیاسي وحدت دی. دغه اهداف د ماسټریخت په پیمان کې تسجیل شول او په هغه اساس اروپایانو په خپلو کې ویزې له منځه یوړې، مهاجرتونه یې آزاد کړ او د اروپا هر هیواد کارګر کولی سوی چې په بل اروپایي هیواد کې ځان لپاره کار پیدا کړي. طبعا د انکشاف له یوې خوا د اروپا د خلکو لپاره ډېر اسانتیاوې منځته راوړې، خو له بلې خوا یې ملي دولتونه نسبتا کمزوري کړل. همدارنګه که ګلوبلایزیشن یا جهاني کېدل او ریجنل انټیګریشن یا منطقوي اقتصادي وحدت ډېرو خلکو ته ګټې رسولې، خو ځینې خلک له دې پروسې نه متضرر شول. په ټولو هیوادونو کې آزاد تجارت مستهلکینو ته ګټه ورسوله، ځکه چې د بین المللي رقابت په نتیجه کې د استهلاکي موادو بیه ټیټه سوه. خو په ډېرو پرمختللو هیوادو کې ځینې صنایع لکه نساجي، فولاد، لباس او نسبتا ارزان استهلاکي اشیاو تولید نو صنعتي هیوادونو ته انتقال سو، ځکه چې هلته د کارګر اجوره ډېره ټیټه وه او په دې اساس په پرمختللو هیوادونو کې د ځینو صنایعو کارګران یې بیکاره سول او ژوند یې ډېر خراب سو. په اکثر صنعتي هیوادونو کې دغو بیکاره سوو کارګرانو په سیاسیونو فشار راوړه چې د اقتصاد د جهاني کېدو مخه ونیسي او ملي اقتصاد قوي کړي. همدارنګه که له یوې خوا د اروپا د اتحادیې په چوکاټ کې د شرقي اروپا خلکو ته اسانه سوه چې هغوی غربي اروپا هیوادونو ته چې د ژوند سطح یې لوړه وه مهاجرت وکړي او کار ترلاسه کړي. له بلې خوا د ځینې غربي اروپایي هیوادونو اصلي خلک د دغو غټو مهاجرتونو نه نارامه سول. ډېرو امریکایانو هم د مهاجرینو په هکله عین تشویش درلوده. په صنعتي دیموکراتو غربي هیوادونو کې په تیرو څو کلونو کې د ژوند جهاني کېدل او د ملي ژوند کمرنګه کېدل کلک سیاسي عکس العملونه راپارولي دي. په برطانیا کې یو نیم کال دمخه د خلکو د اکثریت دغه تصمیم چې برطانیا د اروپا له اتحادیې ووځي یو مهم جریان دی چې عامل برطانیا ته د نورو اروپایي قومونو مهاجرت دی. د غیر اروپایي خلکو مهاجرت اروپا ته د جرمني او فرانسې په وروستي انتخاباتو کې هم غټ نقش درلوده. همدارنګه امریکا ته د مهاجرتونو او له دې مهاجرتونو سره د ځینې امریکایانو خصوصا سپین پوستو امریکایانو مخالفت د ډانلډ ټرمپ په کامیابي کې غټ نقش درلوده. اوس کلتوري موضوعات. اوس ما کاغذ ما زیاد مانده و اینا بگن که وقت خلاص شده. نمیفهم که
Ramosino, is that how you pronounce it? You're next. You have 12 minutes. Thank you.
I think that if you look at the experience, especially of Europe, you have two phenomena which are recently developed. One is devolution. States assign, we have region inside the states and you have local representations. And the other one is international cooperation and the creation of international institutions like the European Union and so on. Both things work in a different direction, but are compatible. And in fact, I think one of the biggest advantage, I'm talking about the European, for instance, in the last 50 years, 60 years, has been both the development of the devolution and the development of international cooperation. This is not an easy process. It's not something that goes smoothly on. At times you have setback. Now we have the problem of populism, which has been mentioned before. You have problems with economic opportunities that may create some kind of sentiment against either devolution or, on the other side, more clearly, more manifestly in this last period, has been a problem with international cooperation. Nations want to get out of, say, the European Union and other situations. Now, this is in general, and I think that since we are here in Afghanistan, we are not in some other places, I would like to see the situation, as I understand, about this problem, devolution and the international cooperation, how you can see it here. I think the region here has a very clear, if you want, lack of regional cooperation. The neighboring countries around here are not countries that it's very easy to cooperate with. There is not economic integration and easy traffic between Iran, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Central Asian Republic, and so on. So you can see that here, and SAARC is something which is very minor and not so relevant in terms of effectiveness. So you see that there is a problem of international cooperation which has not been developed enough. The other problem has to do with the devolution. You see, when we discussed about a possible agreement with the Taliban, with the other people inside this country, there has been a discussion about devolution, and there has been, so to say, a tendency to identify devolution with the failure of the unity of the country, collapse of the unity of the country, which is something which is understandable. It's not the same thing having a devolution and making the country divided. But what is important here is that in this situation, in this country, you have de facto territory, part of the territory goes on their own, they go on their own. You have part of the territories which are controlled by, say, the Taliban or others, and that is not clear what is going to be the, in fact, connectiveness of the country itself. So I think on the concrete side, in Afghanistan, there is a problem of restoring the connection of the country, being able to go from one part to the other one without any problem, without risking. This, of course, is the effect of war, and I think that something should be done. War, economic integration, and development are not something that goes together easily. It is obviously here. You need to put an end of war if you want to have a better economic development. The economy also from this side, if you look from, I mean, I've been always impressed in Afghanistan how much the economy itself is depending on military activities. Every politician of any size has something like 10 bodyguards, armored vehicles. Everything is concentrated on this kind of aspect of life, which has, of course, an economic importance, but are just painting the economic characteristic of the country in a specific way, which is not necessarily a way which you want to be strategically important for the country itself. Coming back, how to get out from the situation, how to improve the economic mobility, economic efficiency, economic opportunity, reduce the role of warlike activities in the economic setting, and essentially make a better peace-oriented society. I think the concern about war here is a general concern. It has to do with your specific life, a life of people, the possibility of movement, the possibility of doing things and developing activities. Young people have very little opportunity here compared with other countries, despite the fact that this is a very rich country, it has a lot of opportunities, minerals, whatever it is. And I think that at this point the issue is that what to do. You see, there has been a mention before by our chair of the session about the President Trump. President Trump also issued something that has to do with the new Afghanistan policy, which will be discussed, I think, in all the meeting here. But I think one of the basic points is that while the change of the number of troops which are based here is not something which is going to do anything. After 6 years, 16 years, after 40 years of war, do you see any improvement in terms of the situation? Do you think that, does anybody think that putting 2,000, 4,000 more troops will change the situation? No, if not, and I think most of the people which I've talked with, and also not only here but also in the United States, believe that this is not possible. So if it is not possible, then one has to find a way in which you can have a settlement agreement and restore the unity of the country. Restoring the unity of the country is a very important part. You want to have a situation where people can shift from by car, say from Herat to Kabul to Kunduz without any problem. And I think that in this sense, it's good to have agreement with everybody which can agree with creating a state which has its own rules and respects some basic rules. And I think that there are opportunities which has been hidden now, and they should be taken again up to discuss with the Taliban and other groups that are ready to discuss with. If you don't do this, I don't see any possible different approach which will be based on coercion. It's not going to work. That's my sense, and I would like to hear, maybe privately, from your perspective, and see if there's something which I'm saying wrong. In conclusion, since I don't want to get over my time, which has been limited, I think that the nation state here is not a theoretical issue. It's not something which has to do with the theory of political science, which has, at times is neither politics nor science. I think that one has to deal concretely with what you want to do, how can be the concrete avenue to restore, A, the connectiveness of the country and bringing together people which are controlling separate areas. B, improve the situation with neighboring countries and other countries and try to get a better economic and political environment. Not an easy task. I'm not saying that this is something that should be done immediately. It's not a matter of accusing anybody of failing to do his own job. The problem is that one has to focus, in my opinion, on this, on restoring international cooperation and improving connectiveness of the country. And then if this is needed, and then the more you find interlocutors, I'm thinking to the Taliban, that are able to deliver, the better it is. If they are not able to deliver, then the situation can become much worse. You have example of a worse situation, of course. I wish this example will be avoided. You have a situation of Syria, where you started with several actors that began, and at some point you had a situation where chaos has been generated. And when you generate chaos, it's very difficult to go back. It's very difficult to eliminate chaos without lots of suffering. And that's the example of Syria. And we need to have exactly this example in mind to avoid as much as we can. And the international community should help. The international community has been a big part of what happened here, and the international community should be helping, maybe in a different way. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for being so amenable to adjusting your time on the fly. I know that's hard.
Thank you very much, Chairman, Chairperson, respected guests, ladies and gentlemen. Dr. Mouradian invited me today to reflect on the different approaches that anthropologists, sociologists, and philosophers have taken in their attempts to theorize the development of the nation state. And the origins of the nation state have, of course, been of great interest to scholars from across all of these disciplines. A key early impetus for early research derived from the emergence of the movements of post-colonial and anti-colonial nationalism. A second body of work arose in the context of the collapse of the Soviet Union and the emergence of various forms of ethnic conflict in its former territories. And of course, in more recent times, the rise to prominence of movements of religious movements of fundamentalism that have positioned themselves as opposing the nation states on the ground that it is a culturally Western mode of organizing human society, has once again excited scholarly interest in the origins and future of the nation state. Before I begin to explore some different theories, it might be worthwhile reflecting briefly, at least, on how we might define the nation state. A very broad definition is the idea of the nation as a significant group occupying a bounded territory which does or should enjoy political autonomy and with a common identity across the whole of society. Whilst this mode of organising life now appears to be self-evident, even natural, the nation-state, as we've already heard, is very much a new feature of political life in much of the world. Until the mid-19th century, a variety of widely different modes of organising territory, political authority and culture existed across the Earth's surface. These range from expansive empires to small city-states and also ephemeral fiefdoms. It was only from the middle of the 19th century onwards when political forms approximating what we today refer to as the nation-state emerged. The leaders of early nationalist movements were well aware that unifying countries around the banner of the nation-state was but the first step in a long process. We have made Italy, remarked Massimo d'Azeglio, now we must make Italians. This remark raises a fundamental question that many theorists of the nation-state have sought to address. Is nationalism and national identity created by the state, or does the idea of nationalism and national identity itself result in the creation of nation-states? Now let me look at some of the key theories. Firstly, a wide and important body of scholarship has seen that the idea of the nation-state is something that arises out of modernity. And this is often called the constructivist approach. It treats the nation-states as something that is constructed, not as something that's present in history. The constructive approach in the study of nationalism builds very much out of the thinking of Karl Marx. Marx understands nationalism and national identity in class terms. Nationalism as a tool that the bourgeoisie used to divide the proletariat, or the working classes, and thus maintain their control over society and wealth. An example of an author who's thought of nationalism in these terms is the British Marxist historian Eric Hobsbawm and his colleague Terence Ranger, who edited an important book titled The Invention of Tradition. They argued that political elites in the 19th century invented fictive traditions with the aim of creating distinct national identities. Scholars working in this vein have also showed how Western imperial and colonial powers used ideas about national identity to weaken non-Western empires, notably, of course, the Ottoman Empire. Perhaps the most prominent modern theorist of nationalism is the anthropologist, philosopher Ernest Gellner, who was professor of anthropology at Cambridge. According to Gellner, the tradition from traditional societies to industrial societies was one of the great ruptures of human history. The tradition, Gellner argued, comprised a shift from simple to complex societies. In traditional societies, social structures were stable, and the role that each person played in society was the most important aspect of their identity. By contrast, industrial societies are complex and large-scale. People have encounters with one another rather than establishing enduring social relationships, and also move between roles and positions, jobs and work, for example, frequently. They also migrate and they also change their work. What did this sociological change from traditional to complex societies have to do with the emergence of the nation-state? Gellner argued that for people to be equipped with the skills to move between roles in an industrial society, they needed to be able to engage in context-free communication. In order to facilitate such types of communication, systems of mass education needed to be developed. Developing such systems required the emergence of standardized written languages or vernaculars that could be used by all in society to communicate. The development of mass education systems and standardized vernaculars themselves required the emergence of a powerful and interventionist state. Gellner argues that as industrialization inevitably takes place in different communities at different rates, as different groups find themselves more or less disadvantaged by the development of industrialization, they become divided on the basis of distinguishing marks, for example, skin color, language, or religion. On the basis of such differences and the forms of conflict over resources and development on which the recognition of these are based, movements of national autonomy and independence arrive. Gellner argues then that the nation-state and national sentiment are created by modernization and industrialization. Nationalism is not an identity or a sentiment that exists in the past. Nationalism, rather, as an ideology, creates nations where nations did not exist. Another well-known scholar who also regards nationalism as being distinctly modern is Benedict Anderson. And his key point is that the nations are always imagined. It is imagined, writes Anderson, because the members of even the smallest nation will never know most of their fellow members, meet them, or even hear of them. Yet in the minds of each, lives in the image of their communion. Anderson argues that modernity created the possibility of particular groups forming imagined communities. He says that the rise of print capitalism, the production, for example, of the newspaper, made it possible for people from diverse backgrounds to imagine themselves for the first time as belonging to a single shared group, even though they had never met one another. For Anderson, like Gellner, this mode of imagining community is a distinctly modern phenomenon. A second set of theories, however, disagrees with these modernist approaches, and we can call this theory the theory of the primordialists. They challenge the notion that it's impossible to trace modern-day national identities into the past. A prominent primordialist is Anthony Smith, who was actually a former student of Gellner, but he disagreed with Gellner on the grounds that on the notion that it's impossible to detect nationalist sentiment before the emergence of industrialization. Smith argues that nationalism actually builds off the history of pre-modern groups that he called ethnies. He argues that the histories of such ethnies provide modern nationalists with the symbols that they can deploy in order to develop bound national identities. Importantly, Smith wasn't saying that nationalists produce accurate histories. He argues the opposite. Nationalists manipulate the past to fashion a golden age, which we've just heard about, around which people in the present rally. Yet Smith is of the opinion that there is a connection between modern nationalist identity and history. A third set of arguments, much more in vogue today, concerns the importance not of culture or modernity to the rise of nationalism, but instead the importance of power, authority, and coercion. The ideas in this body of work can be traced back fundamentally to the German sociologist Max Weber, who laid the ground for a later focus on power and authority. Weber's definition of the state, the monopoly of the legitimate use of force over a given territory, identifies violence and legitimacy as the key criteria that distinguish states from other political institutions. Marx's close friend Friedrich Engels, in his 1848 book, The Origins of the Family, Private Property and the State, argues that the state emerges in history alongside the development of ideas of private property. The ruling class uses the state to maintain control over private property. More recently, scholars have also emphasized the extent to which the nascent state needs to be analyzed in relation to the control by political entrepreneurs and landed elites over access to resources. In this respect, the sociologist Charles Tilley challenges Hobbesian approaches that treat the emergence of the state as a mode of preventing an inevitable war on war that arise from natural inclinations of humanity. Instead, he argues that the rise of the state in early modern Europe is best understood in relationship to coercion and extraction. Tilley argues that the major forms of political participation that Westerners now complacently refer to as modern are for the most part unintended outcomes of the efforts of European state makers to build armies, keep taxes coming, form effective coalitions against rivals, hold their nominal subordinates and allies in line, and fend off the threat of rebellion from ordinary people. Tilley also describes the phases through which the worldwide state system expanded globally, starting with the formation of nation-states in Europe and eventually extending to the wider world through both processes of anti-colonial rebellion and international agreement with the client states of the colonial powers. And in this respect, I'm sure many people would know about it, but the Indian political scientist Partha Chatterjee argues that post-colonial nationalism was in many ways derivative or built off European ideas of the nation-state. And in a very complicated argument, he calls for post-colonial peoples to free their imagine from these colonial influences. Finally, I want to comment briefly on the ways in which Western scholars of the nation state have theorized the role of Islam. I know there's going to be a panel on this later, so I thought I'd open what some prominent scholars in the West have remarked about this issue. There are two basic approaches. On the one hand, there are scholars who argue that Islam is unique from other world religious traditions in the way it is structured and in its thought, and that this has meant that the form taken by the nation state in Muslim-majority contexts is different from the rest of the world. This can be called the exceptionalist argument. Gellner, who we've already heard about, argued that Islam was distinct from other religious traditions because of the extent to which the law, or Sharia, was an essential component of Muslim societies in a manner that was not the case for the Christian world. For Gellner, this had an important implication for the emergence of the nation-state in Muslim lands. Rather than needing to create vernacular languages of communication and legal administration, these contexts were already the possessors of such culture, the Islamic tradition itself. Gellner argued that doctrinal Islam contained many of the components of what we now think of as being modernity: law, literacy, and systems of education. Gellner argues, however, that a consequence of this was that adherence to modern ideas of national identity came less easily in Muslim societies. Another argument who has argued forcefully for Islam playing a critical role in the way in which national identity has developed in Muslim majority and minority contexts is the British historian of Islam, Professor Francis Robinson. Francis Robinson was critical of scholarship concerning the establishment of Pakistan in particular, that emphasized the ways in which elite politicians of the Muslim League, for example, used religious symbols for political goals. He argues instead that Muslims in South Asia actually share an idea of an ideal religious political community that is based on the notions of Sharia, the brotherhood of the Ummah, and the authority of the Sultan. Robinson argues that this ideal has a direct influence on the forms of identity and political mobilization advanced by Muslims in both minority and Muslim and majority settings. More recently, however, scholarship on the relationship between Islam and the nation-state has become increasingly nuanced. A new wave of scholarship has challenged the notion that Islam has shaped the political thinking of Muslims regarding the nation-state in a single way, and that is exceptional to that of the modern West. The American-Turkish scholar Jamal Aydin writes in his recent book, The Idea of the Muslim World, "For devoted and learned Muslims, text and tradition did not demand any one sort of politics. It was possible, depending on circumstances, to support a variety of political projects while retaining strong religious commitment." I'm sure over the course of the next day of the conference we shall see much diversity in the thinking of people in this country and elsewhere about the nature and history of the nation state. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your timely presentation. So we'll now turn to Professor Nazarov.
Dear Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, dear guests, participants of the 6th Herat Security Dialogue. It's my pleasure to be in Herat, the city with 1,000 years of history that played and still playing a very important role in the development of ideas on nation state as a leading model of political organization in the modern world. The topic of my discussion will be the lessons learned from the Central Asia's Golden Age. I would like to draw your attention to this issue from the point of view of history, the topic paradigm of failed states, lessons learned. Of course, there are many lessons to be learned from the past, but my presentation mostly could be called a case study based on the research accomplished by Dr. Starr in a book called Lost Enlightenment, Central Asia's Golden Age from the Arab Conquest to Tamerlane, published by Princeton University Press in 2013, which I had an honor to translate from English into Tajik last year, which is now under translation into many languages of the greater Central Asia and beyond, including Pashto and Dari. The purpose of this presentation, of course, is first of all to introduce the main ideas, lost enlightenment, Central Asia's golden age from the Arab conquest to Tamerlane, and secondly to emphasize some lessons that can be learned from the history of Central Asia. For those present here who so far haven't had a chance and opportunity to read this book, I want just to say that Dr. Fred Starr tells a fascinating but largely unknown story of Central Asia's medieval enlightenment through eventful lives and astonishing accomplishments of its greatest minds, remarkable figures such as Ibn Sina, Biruni, Buzjani, Farabi, Farghani, Balasugani, Behzod, and many others who built a bridge to modern world. Because nearly all of these figures wrote in Arabic, stresses the author, they were long assumed to have been Arabs in the West. In fact, they were from Central Asia, drawn from Persianate and Turkic peoples of the region that today extends from Kazakhstan southward through Afghanistan and from the easternmost province of Iran through Xinjiang of China. One of the outstanding features of the Lost Enlightenment is that the author coins a new term, Central Asians. As a comparison to modern term, the Europeans, the author emphasized that all these nations and peoples of the region, both Afghans, Tajiks, Persians, Turkmens, Uzbeks, Turks, Kazakhs, Kyrgyzs, and other representatives of the people that lived and still living in the region made their contribution to the process of Renaissance of the East. That is, the scientific flourishing or enlightenment of Central Asia. As an optimist, I hope that one day we could speak about the greater Central Asia or modern Central Asians as a region of peace and stability, prosperous and developed, that could make greater contribution to the process of enlightenment of the world community as it has done in the past. The aim of the author is to introduce to the readers in the West and English-speaking countries the Central Asia's golden age during 1400 years of its history, starting from the 8th century to the 12th centuries. Having studied and making reference to more than 1,400 works, Dr. Starr reveals the history that's still largely unknown, not only to the Western readers, but to those living in Greater Central Asia itself. The author pays attention to the geography of the cultural flowering. It includes not only Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, and Uzbekistan, but also Afghanistan as the central component of the broader cultural zone, Pakistan and Chinese province of Xinjiang. No less importance is part of Central Asian culture. The sphere was ancient Khorasan or the land of rising sun. Currently, Khorasan is inseparable from the countries of the region that are now independent, from Afghanistan and from traditional Xinjiang. In spite of differences of languages, ethnically, nationally, and geographically, the inhabitants of all these areas belong to a single, highly pluralistic and multicultural zone. Using a historical comparative method provides an account of the most important accomplishments that Central Asians achieved in astronomy, mathematics, geology, medicine, chemistry, music, social sciences, painting, philosophy, theology, among many other subjects, and who and when these achievements were discovered in Europe and other parts of the world. For example, we know that Ibn Sina wrote over 400 books and treatises, ranging in length from a few pages to multiple volumes, but only 240 survived in any form of which only fraction have been edited and published. The problem does not end there. Large number of surviving manuscripts still languish in archives, have never been translated, edited, and issued in the original Arabic or Persian languages. Only 13% of works by Abu Rayhan Biruni have been published, 7% of his total works. So from the correspondence of Ibn Sina with Biruni, we know that they discussed and tried to find solutions to the issues that still resonate today. For example, they asked, are there any other solar systems out there among other stars, or we are alone in the universe? 600 years later, Giordano Bruno was burned at the stake for championing the plurality of the world. Ibn Sina and Biruni accepted the creation, but emphatically agreed that the earth had undergone profound changes since then. Both anticipated evolutionary geology and even key points of Darwinism by 8 centuries. When eventually Ibn Sina's Canon of Medicine was translated into Latin, it triggered to start a modern medicine in the West and became its Bible. Indians used Ibn Sina's Canon or Al-Qanun fi Tib to develop a whole school of medicine that continues today. Many regard Biruni and Ibn Sina together as the greatest scientific minds between the antiquity and the Renaissance, if not modern age. So this account can be continued with hundreds of other examples, but because of the short of time, I would just restrict over there. Due to these factors, the Lost Enlightenment is now already printed or under translation into many regional and world-known languages, including English and Russian, Kazakh and Uzbek, Turkish and Turkmen, Persian, Pashto, Dari, Chinese, Korean, Azeri, Serbian, and other languages. So Arabic translation was almost the first one. But I would like to draw your attention to a new and more precise definition of the term, crossroad of civilizations. The author writes, intending high praise, many outsiders rhapsodize about Central Asia as having once been a crossroad of civilization. In one sense, this is not only true, but also more valid for Central Asia than for any other region of the earth. It is the point of juncture between Middle Eastern, European, Chinese, and Indian cultures. However, a phrase, a crossroad of civilization, does not have any identity. As if it was just an empty crossroad that was crossed by caravans from east to west and north to south, Professor Starr coins a new, more precise term, which has never ever been or used by any scholar so far. Professor adds, but strictly speaking, crossroad is simply the abstract point between 4 real places with no identity of its own. While it was a crossroad of civilization, it was even more a crossroads civilization. اگر با زبان تاجیکی گپ زدیم این اصطلاح crossroad of اصطلاح چهارراهی تمدن‌ها فرد میگوید که این چهارراهی است در چهارراهی تمدن. این تمدنی هست در چهارراهی تمدن‌ها. نه فقط چهارراهی خالی است، بلکه تمدنی هست در چهارراهی تمدن‌ها. So such a definition of this term gives it real and complete different new meaning. This new term emphasizes the precise identity of Greater Central Asia of that period. So just jumping into the conclusion to say just a few lessons that we learned from that. More important is another question: what connections and importance does the Age of Enlightenment have to our period and region of the Greater Central Asia? One thing must be emphasized, that how modern problems of relation of the East and West, Islam and other greater religions, the rise of the Muslim extremism and others find their solutions. None of these complex issues can be solved with the force of weapons. The great lesson that the Age of Enlightenment left for the world community is the lesson of tolerance and pluralism, using intellect and stable development of science and technology and put it into the service of the people. The start of the history of Central Asia persuades us not to put intellect and faith, science and religion against each other. Just on the contrary, science and technology must be the basis of stable development of life and betterment of the people. As to faith and religion, as a very high value that have long history, they must be recognized as an essence of everyday culture and ethics. Never should religion and politics have to be mixed, as the negative lessons of such mixture we have already had experienced in the past in Tajikistan. To put into a nutshell, I would like to say that the lost enlightenment is a story, the lesson of which we should never be allowed to forget. In a few years from now on, when lost enlightenment is translated into more than 20 languages and wider public gets access to it, I hope the countries concerned shall have better understanding of the golden age of Central Asia and lessons learned. As a teacher or sword, I believe in enlightenment as contrary to ignorance. Thank you very much.
That we have about 15 minutes for questions and answers. Then we're going to go out for a tea break. So you decide when we get to take the tea break. So, yes, Mr. Spanta. And kindly state who you are and actually have a question and direct it to one of the speakers. That would be helpful.
I have only a suggestion. We learned a lot of in this very highly theoretical discourse from the panelists. My wish is regarding to the title of this panel. I don't know how is that in English, but in our language in Farsi is that translated into English probably will be, is the nation state the lack or misery of the nations? Is that our fate or our choice? Dr. Adi in his contribution mentioned that 193 countries are organized in a way in nation-state form or national state form, how you will call it. But I will ask the panelists, please be a little bit more concentrate to respond to this desirable questions so we can then have a proper answer about the future, what we will build in our countries or the countries they are confronted with the failing or failed states. Is that desirable, has a future, etc., etc.? You are all our expert in this regard, looking into your highly and deeply theoretical attitude. And this is my desire. Please be concentrate on the, is that our lack or our misery, having a nation state? Was under empire the situation better? Or we will have a future world state, what will be desirable? Thank you.
Why don't we take about groups of 3? I also, ladies, are any ladies having any questions? I don't see any ladies' hands up. So we'll go over here to this young man in the blue tie. Yep. Yeah, you, the guy, the young man in the blue tie, that would be you, yeah. Go, please.
با عرض سلام، سپاسگزار زحمات جناب دکتر صاحب اسپانتا، جناب دکتر صاحب مرادیان به خاطر زحماتشون که برنامه را تدویر دیدن. و خوش آمد میگم به تمام عزیزانی که از خارج از افغانستان تشریف آوردن. امیدوارم که روزای خوبی در اینجا داشته باشن در هرات. زما پختن لوملی در خاغل دکتر صاحب احدی ده چه دوی بویل چه یو مسئله داو چه دولتونو د حقوقي مساوات مسئله پکې رعایت شو او هغوی ډیر پیاوړی لاس راوړل. دا مسئله د افغانستان څنګه دی او افغانستان دولت څنګه کولای شي چې د حقوقي مساوات مسئله د خلکو ترمنځ رعایت وکړي. And I'm nice to meet you, Mr. Marsden, again in Herat. Welcome. My question is, sir, how Afghanistan can develop its control to its area, or how Afghanistan can grow its power? Thank you.
And then we'll take one more question from the fellow in the back, and then we'll turn to the panelists.
Thank you. با عرض سلام، موضوعی را که من می‌خواستم تبصره بکنم، دکتر صاحب اسپانتاو را گفتن. هدفی است که ما آمده مطابق به برنامه و پینلی که بود، بحث این که دولت‌های ملی خوشبختی بار میاره یا نه، این مسئله بود که بعد دقیقاً تقاضای ما، علاقه ما این بود که پنلیست‌ها به این موضوع می‌پرداختن. از نظر
The way in which the question is posed has always been problematic. From my perspective, looking at a country like Afghanistan, it's not that we can talk about a failed state, it's that we can talk about a part of the world that has been failed by the international state system, given the geographical location of Afghanistan, its history, and that has all too often been overlooked. Another thing that's been overlooked all too often is the fact that even in that very difficult position that this country or this region of the world has been placed in, the fact is that, in fact, its people have managed to create their own structures and their own relationships and their own resources to survive. And that's also too often overlooked as well. More broadly, in terms of the question of is it fate or misery, I think there again we need to, and also to what extent is an imperial mode of organizing territory better or worse than the national state system? I think here the need actually is for there to be specific. Of course, globally there are some countries in the so-called third world that have done very well from the nation state system. There are others like Afghanistan which have been treated a lot less unfairly by it. But we also know that within Afghanistan there are some groups or sections of society that also profited rather handsomely from the nation-state system, and there are other groups that have been treated rather less positively by it. So there's always a need for to be specific about these issues. But as I see it at the moment, that unless a country like Afghanistan is able to find ways and relationships of extending its influence more broadly and of benefiting from the wider region, then the nation-state system is always going to be something of a burden. And that brings me to the question posed by the young gentleman over here in terms of what about how can Afghan develop power? Well, here again what I'd say is that in the early 2000s with the international intervention, the focus was always on the so-called lack of capacity in Afghanistan and the need for so-called capacity building. What I've always thought about this context is that in fact that there's a surplus of capacity. We have people that are able to do multiple things at the same time. As we see in our list of participants, scholar, diplomat, businessman, politician, all in one figure. And we have also Afghans in the wider region who are working, who are trading, who have got knowledge and who have got experience of dealing with different structures. So for Afghanistan to develop its power, I think it's about recognizing its own potentials, both nationally and also internationally. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Would you like to respond? And we'll end with you, sir, because you have quite a bit to say. Yes.
I would say about the question. All right. About the question, it's a state, it's a nation state, something positive or is a curse. My answer is that the answer does not matter, okay? It's irrelevant. The point is that whatever we do, politics will not depend on the answer. It's not that we say, we wake up in the morning and say, oh, nation states are bad, and then the world changes. The world will stay like this, so we can think whatever we want, but it doesn't matter. The point is that, in my opinion, there are different, all states have been created by a series of random events, including war. There is no state which is perfect in terms of identifying its nations and its boundary and everything. Europe is full of this. Full states which are mixed in language and culture and whatever it is. The way in which the problem has been solved, as I was saying before, is a combination of devolution, so you have local region which has something to matter, and international cooperation, eliminating the boundary. So this is the point. Now, is this a solution? Maybe it's been a solution, maybe we'll have now after effect, counter effect, possible. But I don't think that the system as with devolution and international cooperation will collapse. I don't expect if it will collapse, will not depending on what we think about. In terms of, I am surprised to hear that someone is considering the Trump South Asian policy positive. Good luck, okay? I think that the idea of making some fictitious military solution which doesn't work is not going to solve any problem. The problem in here should be solved only by some political solution. Okay, political solution, that's exactly was the topic of a meeting that we had recently in Washington, in fact, at the Department of Defense. So, this is the idea. We have to think about political solution. Political solution means you talk with others, including, especially, the Taliban. Now, you want to reconstruct the unity of the country? Sure, it's important. Then we have to maximize the effort in which dialogue and communication can improve the situation on the ground. Is the situation on the ground positive? I don't want to discuss in general terms about failed state, non-failed state. I think the sense is that the situation on the ground is not so positive. Otherwise, people will be saying something different. Are people happy with this situation with war? No, people are not happy with war. So something should be done. Are people happy with the cooperation with neighboring states? No, for various reasons. I don't want to get judgment, but I'm saying that there is a problem there. And I think that in this sense, something should be done. And I think that there is a lot of important richness in Afghanistan, not only in terms of cultural and political, but especially also in terms of goods, positivity. There is a lot of resources that should be used and offer better opportunity to the new generations. If the new generations offer only the idea of war-like, activities, defending this guy as opposed to the other guy, military activity, NDS, or the Taliban on the other side. If this is the only solution, then I think that this situation of Afghanistan will not improve, will not get over. Just to remind, as a final thing, a friend of mine which told me some time ago that he was asking a group of 100 people from different insurgents group to leave insurgency and go back to civilian activity. It succeeded. And then he told me, after a month, 2 months, everybody came back. There was no opportunities. Okay? So I think then one has to create opportunities here for the people. And the opportunities are only there if you have a non-war environment.
And we'll end with you, Dr.
Ahad. Actually, I addressed some of these questions that in last part of my paper, but didn't get the time to really go there. To be very direct, we were not told that whether this is a fortune or a blessing or a curse. But in my opinion, the development of a nation state, national community, and national will, that is a blessing in the political evolution of society. So I have no qualm regarding that issue. I think it is quite important for any theory of democratic legitimacy to have this kind of notion. So I think the proper or the difficult question is what constitutes a nation, or a nation state, I think earlier was referred to it. In my opinion, based on the discussion the professor had earlier, I believe it's a combination of both what Gilner and what Smith would say. I think that a state starts with sort of primordial identities of some sort. And I think it's quite important for human beings. I mean, now psychological studies and other studies have indicated that identity is an important issue for human beings. And I think national identity is one of those important identities. So I think that we start with some primordial identities. But I think it's important, as I've said in my presentation, states' borders are not the same as in a national group's population where they live. And therefore, it is important to have this equality of all citizens within that states. Since when, just to answer questions regarding Afghanistan, I think since the French Revolution, that has become sort of the accepted philosophy for any nation. To have equality of citizens. And I think that is enshrined in our current constitution as well as in our previous constitution. Yes, in the life of national societies, there were periods of discrimination. But I don't think that's sustainable. I don't think it will be legitimate. And I think in this case, Afghanistan's new constitution is very progressive. And I would say it meets all the standards that a national society would have. I had 4 observations, but anyway, I'm sorry that I didn't have time to go into this. Thank you.
Thank you all. Dr. Moradian has asked that I wrap it up, and we will now have a tea break. Thank you.